Hello there, AP Human Geography students. Let's all learn about industry and development. This is probably one of the largest units of the class, but I have to teach you guys how the economy of the world works. So let's jump into it. Let's do it. So clicking, whoa, wow, we're going all over the place now. Here's a map of GDP per person. So this is a way to sort of say how wealthy is your country divided by its population. Because as we know today, America is still the wealthiest country in the world, and China is second place. And you're probably like, Mr. Brown, but it looks like China's kind of low on this scale. Well, there's a whole bunch of people in China. China has 4 or 5 times the population of the United States. So yes, they may have the second most wealth in the world, but it is divided amongst many, many more people. But what do we notice from looking at this map? It looks like the Western world has the most GDP per person. Looks like East Asia's second place. There's a couple Middle Eastern countries that are really shining here. Latin America isn't that bad, but it looks like developing Asia and a lot of sub-Saharan Africa, they're behind on the GDP per capita scale. Okay, so then let's talk about the word development. So then we can even have a little mini debate about this. So development is the to grow, to cause to grow, to become more mature, to become more advanced. And in general terms, when we talk about development in the world, we're going to talk about a more technological city, more factories, more big buildings. But usually I liked it when some students sort of mention, like, you know, if you are spiritually developed, well, you don't need big buildings and fancy technology. You know, like this dude right here, he's kicking it with Buddha. He's doing his thing in meditation. Is he not developed? I would argue he is, but the human geo sense of the term would generally refer to more technology, more advancement, more money. And we could even have that big conversation of, well, does that stuff really help society? Does that help you? So people will have different definitions of development, but we're talking about technology, okay? So yes, this is low development. This is high development. People are just building themselves up. And then here's sort of the development map of the world. It's almost the same thing as the GDP per person map. So more development, more money. But more money, more problems. This dude, he's chill. You know, he don't need to be developed. Okay, so the development map, I think I just referenced that. Whoop. So world income. All right, 300 million people a year make more than $20,000 a year. Almost everybody with a more than minimum wage job in the United States will be making more than 20 grand a year. Actually, even if you were full-time minimum wage, you probably still do make 20 grand a year. But there's so many billions of people on planet Earth who make less than $1 a day. And so many of those people you'll find in sub-Saharan Africa or developing Asia. The average person on planet Earth, finances are a serious, serious struggle. And if you're living in the Western world, you don't even have to deal with half the problems other people around the world have to deal with. I've been to some other countries in the world, kids, and I've seen some serious poverty. The kind of poverty that just makes your stomach turn. So just know that our part of the world's doing real great when it comes to economic stuff. Even in the middle of a pandemic and all kinds of other crises, people here generally aren't starving. That's a serious concern in other parts of the planet. Okay, so let's see. Which letter would be the most developed part of the world? I would argue that A is the most developed. And then, I mean, Australia is a part of the West too, but Australia, like, they're still building themselves up there. You know, they've got all this open, empty space. So I would argue that A is first place, D is second place, E is third place, and then, I mean, these two are definitely the lower ends. Then probably C and then B. Some students could even argue that Japan is more developed than America, and I'll hear that argument and maybe accept parts of that. But yep, once again, here's the development map of the world. So generally have an idea where the fancy parts of the world are and where the not so fancy parts of the world are. That's all about that making money, yo. Okay. So the 3 or 4 factors of production are land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. A lot of people kind of leave entrepreneurship out, but if there's ever a question on my test that I wrote, and it's like, how many factors of production are there? The official answer is 4. I say entrepreneurship is a factor. So let's talk about land and labor on this slide, and the next slides will be capital and entrepreneurship. So you need land to make money in your life, believe it or not. And the land, it's not necessarily that you have to be the physical owner of the land, but you just have to have a place to do your work. More and more people are, like right now, doing your work from your house. And you have to have the ability to have your house and have a space to work. So, you gotta have a place to do the job. Even if it's a virtual place to do the job. So, like, for example, when I started my internet business, I remember I went through all these processes to see, like, does my company's name have a .com website that I could I could buy easily? And I found out that no one had owned my company's name's .com website, and I bought it for $50. So hey, that was pretty great. That was my location for my company. The next thing you need is labor. You need human workers. They could do the work physically. They could do the work for you electronically. They could be workers because of their intellectual assistance with your job. You could hire them for their skills. So you need people to work for you, but sometimes it could just be you yourself doing the work. So that's land and labor. Probably the 2 biggest parts to do anything in society. All right. So, yep, here's the land is, of course, a farm, and the laborers are a bunch of people there working. These guys are working in a mine. Then, if you're trying to sell, limestone, then you're going to need to get limestone quarries going on. And then here, these people are working in some kind of computer center, but where this place isn't as relevant, okay? Because there's certain businesses where the land has to have certain resources. Like, you can't have a primary industry anywhere in the world. You have to, but alternatively, a secondary or tertiary industry, maybe you could move that around the world as much as you want. Okay, and then the other 2 factors, capital and entrepreneurship. Capital is a really important concept that you guys got to know. It's the money, the machines, the tools, the cars, the physical, the computers, the things you need to operate your business. Most of the time, capital is just money. Because it's assumed that, hey, I give my worker a bunch of money, my worker will buy the tools they need to do the job. But capital can just be considered any of the machines, any of the physical things to help the business do its thing. But then the last factor that's sometimes excluded is entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship is the idea and the leadership to start a business. And so the entrepreneurship is the only one of those things that isn't like a physical item to any degree. Entrepreneurship is just saying that there's somebody who has the willpower, the vision to create this business and to lead it to success. So like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, they have entrepreneurship for sure. Elon Musk has like 5 businesses going on right now. That dude's awesome. But yep. So capital, another word for capital is assets. So it's anything your business owns to get the job done. All right, cool. Let's check out some of these pictures. So that big old tractor, that's capital. All this money can be considered capital. The building itself could be considered capital, but then the building is usually considered land as well, so it gets kind of tricky there. And then there's this machine, which is capital. And yep, any physical capital, human-made objects to create better services. Okay, so now we're talking about basic industries. So this is another name for primary industries. I covered this in the agriculture unit, but it's farming, lumber, resource extraction. A basic industry is where you're just working off the land in some way, shape, or form. You're getting the resources in some way, shape, or form. This is what most humans did for most of history, especially with agriculture. But nowadays, with the third agricultural revolution and food being so cheap and genetically engineered, it grows itself practically, less and less people end up working in basic industries, and more people are moving into the secondary and tertiary sectors of the economy. Okay, so this is a capital-style machine farming on some land. Here's some people cutting down trees. They are mining out stuff out of the ground, and there's an oil derrick pumping oil out of the ground. Okay, now let's talk about infrastructure. Oh, this is a great concept for human geo. Infrastructure is all the physical organizational structures and facilities needed to operate a society. That's a big fancy way of defining it. But when I hear infrastructure, the first thing that my brain always goes to is roads. Roads are infrastructure. But what else is infrastructure? It's the plumbing beneath a city. It's the electrical cables. It's the Wi-Fi network. It's cell phone towers. It's train stations. It's airports. It's ship ports. It's sort of like all the things that society provides us so we can generally navigate a city or a country. Your car itself isn't infrastructure, but the roads, the traffic lights, the stop signs, the highways, all of the things that you need to get around with your car, that is infrastructure. And I mean, imagine going out into the middle of the wilderness and trying to use your cell phone. It's not going to work because the infrastructure isn't there. There's no cell phone towers. Go to a campsite and be like, I need to charge my phone. Well, there's no electrical outlets. There's no infrastructure way off in the middle of nowhere. And I'm going to make this hard statement right now. You could add this to your notes if you want. Infrastructure is the primary thing holding back development in many countries around the world today. Many countries in developing Asia and in sub-Saharan Africa, their economies would do way better, their style of living would do way better if they could just physically move about the country more easily, and if they had sufficient access to the internet, to cell phones. If all their stuff worked as well as it works over here, then the world would be a much more equitable place. No doubt. I stand by that statement. Okay, so let's check out some pictures of infrastructure here. So all these concepts here are infrastructure, but especially the roads. Roads is infrastructure. And yeah, here's a picture of Haiti after their big earthquake. You can see that the roads are now blocked with a bunch of debris, so it's basically impossible for vehicles to get around the city. And it's especially difficult if emergency vehicles have to help people after the earthquake, like you just can't get through. Yeah, and then this is just more concepts of infrastructure. Oh yeah, waste removal. That's another huge part of infrastructure. Sanitation. Yeah, public transportation. All these things are in the realm of the world of infrastructure. Things that society provides its people so that they can function as easily as possible. And yeah, so here's examples of bad infrastructure. I mean, imagine driving along this road and your car hits this giant hole in the middle of the road and your car gets stuck. And then, yeah, cars can flip over, cars get stuck in the mud. So all of this is just, if your infrastructure sucks, it's so hard to operate a reliable society. Yep, roads are infrastructure. And then where'd the road go? I don't know, but now you can't get to the other side of town. So that just sucks. Okay, so what influences a country's economic productivity? I told you, I think infrastructure is probably one of the biggest variables, but really it's all four of the factors of production I said before. It's, does your country have great land, great labor, great capital, and great entrepreneurship? And I could almost go country by country and tell you if they got it or if they don't got it. But yeah, so does the country have access to human, natural capital resources? Do they have a skilled workforce? That's their labor. Natural resources largely refers to their land. Are their transportation communication networks modern, outdated, or do they not even exist? If they don't even have paved roads, good luck. Do they have access to new technologies? So yeah, let's check out some of these pictures here. So this is a freeway interchange in Los Angeles, California. So you see, like, imagine when we were first building this stuff. It must have taken us so much effort, so much planning, so much designing. But the freeways in LA, I mean, even though they're always clogged up because there's so many people there, at least the freeways are designed in a very manageable way. Yes, the traffic in LA sucks, but the traffic is way worse in Lagos, Nigeria. I'll tell you that much. And here's kind of a cool thing. They're planning to create these highways all across Africa so that all the major cities are connected together. This would be really great. This is in a planning stage right now. This is not yet done, but I think as soon as these freeways exist connecting all these African countries, it would dramatically help so many of these African economies so they could move their products and they could access things way more easily and efficiently. Because here's what a lot of the roads look like right now in Africa. Okay, every time it rains, the roads can just kind of melt away and cars can get stuck in the mud, and it's pretty terrible. My sister has shared me a lot of stories about Uganda, how she's just had a struggle accessing certain villages. Okay, and then here's these underground cables that they now got being set up in countries more and more. Because if you go to some older parts of the United States, you'll see that they've got these electrical wires outside of everybody's house kind of connecting all the houses together. But nowadays, we figured out how to do underground cabling, which is a lot safer, a lot more reliable, and definitely it doesn't block people's views or their sidewalks like they do in other parts of the country. And they are building new bridges in Africa, so this is great. You know, more bridges, more infrastructure, sounds good to me. But here's what happens when sometimes there's just a mess. Okay, I think I saw stuff like this when I went to Bangkok, Thailand. And, you know, you're like, well, Mr. Brown, this is infrastructure, right? These are electrical cables connecting electricity to people's houses. But Bangkok made some terrible choices because they have multiple power companies. And each power company is trying to like sell power more cheaply to other people. So each one of these wires connects to a different power company. Well, not all of them connect to different power companies, but it's just a mess. Society works a whole lot better if the government provides power for everybody rather than having all these different electrical cables all over the place. Yeah, here's just more examples of this. And like all the time, these things could like spark off and fry, and then nobody has power. Super duper unreliable. Yeah, imagine you work as this guy and you got to try to figure out why one of the power lines isn't working. Like, oh my goodness. And they have to wrap the power lines in foam so they don't spark off on each other. This is just a disaster. But yeah, you'll see this in some parts of the developing world where power isn't regulated by the government. Okay, and I think I'll save this for the next video. All right, peace out.